welcome back to another monthly webinar. Thanks for everyone that has taken the time to join us today. Today, we're going to dive into our second webinar in regards to AI. A few months ago, we focused on AI in general, and essentially the goal of that webinar was to inform coaches what AI was, general ideas on how it can assist us as coaches, and just some initial thoughts on how we can leverage. At that time, we had dug into AI for a few months, and we're now a few months smarter in terms of how we think we can use and leverage, which we'll get into a little bit later. But this time, we're going to talk about, or we're going to discuss ideas around using AI for program design specifically. So why are we continuing to have this AI conversation? So outside of the obvious, and it's just like the big thing to talk about. It's all the rage so far in 2023. It won't be a surprise to you guys that were on that last webinar because we did discuss this, but we are currently in the works of implementing it into CoachRx. And we've been digging pretty deep as a company in terms of how we can leverage AI inside of the platform natively, understanding its capabilities and how we can use it to, again, help coaches that are using the platform. So the principles that we lay out today and that we discuss and walk through using ChatGPT are the ones that our own CoachRx language model will be built against. So all these principles will be inside of that language model that we're building. The big difference is a lot of what will be behind the scenes and what we're going to walk through in terms of like, think about this with prompting, give context here. A lot of that stuff will be automatically implemented in the system based on your client's data that you provide in platform. So just think about like assessment data, metrics, goals, past workouts, past lifestyle prescriptions, etc. So once this thing launches, the idea is you guys don't really have to think about all of the things that we're talking about in terms of like clarity, give context, personalize, master prompting, all of that. The goal is that the software does that for you. But until then, we just wanted to have another conversation on how you can use ChatGPT specifically in terms of implementing it in your program design. All right, so just want to give a quick reminder. I believe we talked about this last webinar. Yeah, we did have this launched last webinar, but I wanted to remind you guys that we do have this CoachRx prompt database. Let me close this out, sorry guys. So we do have this CoachRx prompt database. So you'll get it in the email post webinar if you guys don't know where to find this. But essentially what we do is we update this database on a monthly basis. And inside of this database, we have a few things laid out. So we have category, use case, how to use, the prompt itself, and an example. So inside of the categories, we have program design examples and how you can use AI for your program design. And that's what we're going to walk through today. We have nutrition examples, we have lifestyle, and we also have communication examples. We also have, and I'll come back to this, I'm actually going to use this database once we get into the practical application portion of the webinar. But we also have this class that we launched a few months ago as well. That's AI for fitness coaches. And we're now offering this class for free to everyone. And in this class, it's more of like best practices, what is AI, how to use it, ethical considerations, and all of those things. So if you guys haven't dug into this class, you will get that email that will have a link directly to that class for free for you guys to view post-webinar. All right, let's dig into the content for today. So goal here, guys, is to kind of roll through this pretty quick. So I want to lay out these principles, and then I want to get to the practical application portion of the webinar so we can then have a good amount of time for Q&A at the end. So today we're going to dig into these specific principles. So there's 4 of them that I'm going to walk through today. Okay, so the idea here is to take a second, take a step back, and really understand as coaches what we need to think about when we're using AI. And I said specifically as coaches because let's be honest, your clients can go in and use AI and build training programs for themselves. And the idea and the goal here is to just be a step ahead there, to be a step ahead. So like I said, at the end of the webinar, I'm going to take a little bit of a chance and hope that technology works with me as we run through some live GPT program design examples. So just be patient if I have any technical difficulties. The principles that we're going to walk through today, they're going to be clear, give context, master prompting, and refine. All right, principle number one. So this is all based around clarity. Okay, so we should understand exactly what we want the technology to do for us. Okay. Um, we, and we'll get into this more specifically when we talk about context, but we have to realize that AI, let's just talk about ChatGPT specifically, because that's what we're going to lean into today. ChatGPT is monitoring everything on the internet. All right, there's a lot of things on the internet. Okay, so we have to be very pointed in terms of what we want that platform to give us back. Okay, so the clearer that our intentions are, the more actionable the outputs that the platform is going to provide us will be. Okay, so understanding exactly what you intend to get from ChatGPT, is it a recommendation? Is it a prescription? Is it feedback? Is it inspiration? Is it additional ideas? Is it research based on the ideas that you already have? So just really understand and be really clear with the AI or with ChatGPT what you intend to get out of it. So being really clear and having clarity is principle number one. Principle number two is all around context. Okay, so this idea of general inputs yield general outputs. Okay, so as coaches, and kind of what we play in is specificity, personalization, all of those things. We want to give ChatGPT as much context as possible as it relates to the goal of your client, who the client is, what their experiences are, maybe some additional assessment context pieces. And then you have to give it context in terms of what is success, for example. And we have this example in the database, right? Where it's just like, I could ask ChatGPT to say, hey, I took my client through this movement screen. Can you give me some recommendations on what I should do next? There's some things that I should think about next. If we just do that, again, what is ChatGPT going to do? It's going to scrub the entire internet and it's going to come to conclusions in terms of what it thinks is quote unquote right. So instead of just stopping there, maybe at the bottom say, and this is what good would be, right? This is what passing the air squat would be. This is how much time I would want to hold in that front plank, things like that. So we want to give it as much context as possible. And by doing this, we guide ChatGPT or just the general AI model to generate more personalized and beneficial responses. Okay, so AI right out of the box, and when I say right out of the box, I just mean AI scrubbing the entire internet, is going to be really broad. So you must get personalized here if you just want better outputs. Because like I mentioned at the top, it's like your clients can also go in and say, write me an 8-week row program. And then they'll get an 8-week row program and they'll think it's good because ChatGPT just gave it to them. So principle number two is to give context to the platform. Okay, next principle, we're talking about mastering prompting. Okay, so again, this goes back to the idea of like, you know, the general output or the general inputs will yield general outputs, but now we're talking about exactly how we're communicating with the model. Okay, so this is going to be, I want to preface it with this. So this is going to be a skill that we all must have and a game that we all must play if we decide to use AI. If we aren't using AI, then who cares, right? But I assume that everyone's here because we're probably interested in how this thing can help us and be our coaching assistant. So mastering prompting is something that is just going to be important for everyone. Okay, so if you've dove into our AI database, this probably sticks out to you in terms of how we structure our prompts. And again, we'll dig deeper and we'll actually break down how we prompt inside of there. But as you look at that database, you'll understand that there's a very clear structure to how we prompt. And then what we're going to talk about next is how you can refine based on the output that you give it. Okay, so, or the output that it gives you. So we'll dive deeper into this specifically when we go through the walkthrough. But the last principle is to don't just take the first answer and go with it. Understand that when you're, I hate to use the word communicating because it's not like you're talking to a human, but when you're going back and forth with the AI, you can like dig in, you can dig deeper, you can ask it to give you a better response or to give you a better output, right? So this is what refinement is. Okay, so if it gives you a squat program and you're like, well, no, I want weights, I want percentages, I want where this came from. Like, you gave me this squat program that looks pretty good. Now I want you to now give me context in terms of what resources did you use to build this squat program? What principles fall behind this squat program and all of those things. So you can kind of just like play with it and refine the response that you're getting from ChatGPT. I know we have Q&A at the end, but I do want to take a second and just open up the chat box if you guys have any questions on any of those principles. So as a reminder, they were clarity. So be clear, give context, understand that you're going to have to continue to master the prompting game, and understand that after you get an output, so you place your prompt in, ChatGPT gives you an output. Refining after that is also something that is important to get better responses. All right, I will take that as no questions. Okay, let's get into the practical application piece. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go right from our database here. So this prompting database, and I'm going to pluck this first program design piece here. Okay, so first I'm going to walk through it, then we'll go over to ChatGPT. I'll give it context, then I'm going to walk through how I'm thinking about those 4 principles in terms of my first prompt to ChatGPT, and then we'll kind of go through some refinement pieces inside of that. Okay, so I want to be clear about something. I don't know what it's going to kick back to me because it gives you a different response every time you plug something in. So I'm going to kind of go on the fly there and try to refine it based on what it says. So bear with me. Okay, so the one that we're going to use is in the program or in the category of program design. So the use case that we're digging into is used to build an 8-week program to improve your client's 5K row time trial. Okay. And then our third column here, we have how to use. Okay. So number 1, test your client's 5K row time trial as a starting point. Okay. Let's say that I already did that because I'll have a score there. Number 2 is understand your client's limitations during the test. Okay. So you implement the test, understand why your client got what they got, talk to your client. What were your limiters? What was difficult? What held you back? You got 20 minutes. Why didn't you get 18? Okay. Number 3, we're going to insert the prompt with the client data. And then number 4, we're going to use the AI generated response as inspiration for your client's 8-week program. I kind of hedged there and said as inspiration because I just don't think it's best practice to just copy and paste out of ChatGPT. I do think that we should, with what we have right now, and we don't have a very refined language model because we're using the entire internet. I think that we should use that response and then still tailor that response after we roll through it. And then this is what the prompt is going to be. So build an 8-week row progression for my client to improve their 5K row time trial based on their current 5K row time, limitations they had during the test, and how many days to train they have per week. And then I have these bottom pieces here. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I have this plugged into ChatGPT already, but I haven't hit generate yet. But before I hit generate, I'm just going to kind of walk through each one of these pieces and what I filled in already. Okay, so what we do here, let's talk about clarity first. Okay, so from a clarity standpoint, I was really clear. It's like, I want you to build me an 8-week row progression. Okay, so I needed ChatGPT to understand exactly what I needed from it. Okay, so I just needed that 8-week row progression. Okay, so clarity, check. Okay, giving context. Okay, so the context was they have a 24-minute 5K row time. Okay, context given there. Context, 3 limitations that I noticed. Okay, number 1, quadricep muscle endurance. So complained of muscles burning. Number 2, uncomfortable on the rower for that long, does not have a lot of training experience on the rower. And context or limitation number 3, unable to catch breath about halfway through, lungs and breathing were a limiter. Okay, so I'm just giving it context around that client and their limitations. And then finally, I wanted to let ChatGPT know that the client had 2 days to train on the rower. Okay, I think that's important because if we forget that one, ChatGPT might throw out like a 5-day rowing 5-day per week rowing progression, and maybe you only want to do rowing intervals 2 times per week. So that was context. Okay. So now we go to mastering prompting. And I can't I can't say this is how we've mastered prompting, but I'm going to kind of give you some ideas or things to think about. Okay, number 1, organize thoughts, but right to the point. Okay. So that was in the initial prompt, right? So I was really clear on what I wanted it to build, and then I was really clear on how I was going to give it information. Okay. So we'll just call this a bracketing model. Okay. So we use the bracketing model in all of our prompts. Okay. So with this inside of these brackets, I'm saying in bracket number 1, you're going to have current 5K row time. Bracket number 2, you're going to have limitations. Bracket number 3, you're going to have days to train. And then I go to the bottom and I put all of that data in brackets. And the reason why this is important when working with ChatGPT, because if you give it a lot of information, it's trying to understand what that information means. Okay. So if we misspell things, like Juan said in the chat, if we misspell something, if we put something in the wrong place, if we're not really clear about something, we're almost doing ChatGPT's job for it by saying, this is exactly what their limitations are. They're in these brackets. This is where you'll find them. This is how many days to train they have. This is what their 5K row time trial is. So that goes around the idea of being really clear and organized in your prompting. And if you guys look through that database, you'll notice that all those prompts, we try to make those as clear and organized as possible for ChatGPT and for you, so you know exactly where you need to plug in client information. All right, so I'm going to hit generate here, and let's see what this thing does. Obviously, give me 1 second, guys. All right. All right, so what it's doing, so it looks like it's going to break the 8-week training program into 2-week like micro blocks. So block number 1 is building basics and endurance. Okay, so gave me a warm up, gave me a main set, gave me a cool down. Essentially what it's doing on day 1, it looks like day 1 we're building volume. And I assume it's probably going to give me that throughout the 8 weeks. And then it looks like day 2 is going to be more intense pieces. So let's call them intervals, more intense intervals. All right, so week 1 and 2, building basics and endurance. I'm not going to read through all of the program design, guys. I'm just going to kind of try to quickly see what I notice and then give it some refining prompts. So weeks 1 and 2, building basics and endurance. Weeks 3 and 4, building muscle endurance and familiarity. Okay, so yep. So it's sticking with the same thing, volume, and then we're doing more interval type pieces here. Weeks 5 and 6, intensity and lactate threshold. Week 7, fine tuning and increasing duration. So I would just call that like probably a week of tapering before the retest. And then week number 8 is test prep and recovery. So I'm assuming that'll probably be somewhat of a deload before the test week. So it looks like we have base building and weeks 1 through 4, intensity 5 and 6. Week 7 looks like we have some tapering, and then week 8 looks like we have some prep for the test itself. Okay, so okay, decent. I kind of see what they're doing there. What they didn't give me is exact paces. So a refining prompt could be something like give me exact paces for each session. Okay, so I'm going to go give me exact paces for each session. I would like the average paces to stick to average pace per 500 meters. And let's see if it's smart enough to understand what that is based on the 24-minute time trial, which it did. Okay, awesome. All right, so it looks like it's taking a second to shoot this out, but what it's doing is it's giving me the exact same training program which I was looking for, and all it's doing is it's adding exact pace per 500-meter paces there. So if we went up, okay, so it's saying given a 5K row time of 24 minutes, which is an average of 4:48 per 1K or 2:24 per 500 meters, using that as a reference. So that's good that I didn't have to give it that context. So 4 by 750 at 2:30 per 500. I just want to look at the paces and see how that progresses. So on this day one, 2:30, 2:26. So like we anticipated, a little bit more intense. A little bit more intensity was the goal of ChatGPT there. Okay, then we're doing a 1K at a little bit faster of a pace. Might be a little bit too aggressive for my liking. We're getting we're increasing meters and decreasing pace at the same time. I'd probably follow it up with like, let's do one or the other. I'm not going to spend time and do that, but that's probably what I would ask it. And then it looks like we're hitting our most intense paces on that last week, which we're getting down to 221 per 500 meters. Okay, awesome. So let's do this. I'm going to do another refining prompt here. I'm going to say add session specific warm-ups and cooldowns for each day that can be done in about 5 minutes. I would like to focus on these warm-ups and cooldowns to address the limitations that the client is experiencing on the rower, and also better prepare them for the session and prepares them to recover well post session. So obviously we can do this all day and kind of like really refine and tweak and all that. At the end of the day, we're probably thinking, why don't we just write the program ourselves with how long that might take? I agree, but the goal here was just to kind of like lay out and see how it see the outputs that it gave us based on those refining prompts. Okay, so it gave me a warm up and cool down for each session, and then it put timestamps on those to ensure that they're done in 5 minutes. So that's good. And then I'm just going to give it one more. I'm going to give it one more prompt here, and this is more in structure. I'm going to go ahead and stop generating that. I'm going to give it one more prompt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, now with all recommendations included, lay these sessions out in the following format. Row is placed in as an example only. Okay, so day one, warm up. I want them to insert warm up. And then I want to have A, because that's the format in which I program in. And I want to have the exercise, or for this example, it would just be rowing. So row 15 minutes at whatever pace they recommend, rest 5 minutes times 2 sets. So I just want the meat of the session to be laid out like that. And then I want the cool down to be at the bottom. All right, so it looks like it's doing that exactly as I wanted. So essentially what it's doing is it's just structuring the training session how I'd want it to structure. If you guys have played around with ChatGPT at all in terms of like build me a program for this, it's very clunky in terms of the format. So if you're used to a very particular format in program design and you can't even like look at a screen and understand what it's trying to do, you could actually just tell it like, stop generating, redo that program, but I want it in this like A1, A2, B1, B2, or ABC, whatever format you want. And then it'll give you a thumbs up and regenerate that in the format that you ask it.
Hey, Carl, we do have a question about the pacing. So it says, is that an example pace, or would you use brackets for pace, or will it know to insert each day's pace?
So what I asked it on this, I don't know if it's relative to this last prompt, but what I asked it was to just continue to keep all information prior. So when I did bracket the time trial, and then we kind of checked its work, it gave me paces based on that time trial, right? So I don't know if that's the question that's being asked, Ashley, but yeah, you don't have to bracket the pace because you had already bracketed what that time trial was.
Thanks, Carl.
Yep. Actually, I see the question now. It's from Sarah. Sarah, I think you might be referring to when I plugged that in. So on that last prompt, maybe it was this one where I didn't bracket. Um, I just told it here, and I'm not saying this is going to be the right answer 100% of the time. I told it here. The row session is placed in as an example only. So I didn't feel like I needed to bracket that because I didn't tell it I was going to bracket that. I just said this row is going to be an example. Don't actually design off of this specifically. Awesome. Cool. Okay. So I know I said that was the last prompt, but this is a bonus. Okay. Whenever you use ChatGPT, you're working in like specific chats, right? So you can have like 50 chats that are active and live on the left side of your ChatGPT. What I'm going to do is, so let's say that I'm coaching James Fitzgerald, and this is probably James's 5K road time, 24 minutes. Let's say I'm coaching James, and I'm like, okay, I want to continue to use this as James's chat. Okay. I would just plug in this. Okay. I would like to save this chat for my client, James. Please keep in mind his goals, limitations, etc., as I ask more questions about James. Okay. So I'm going to plug that in. And what I can do is I can just like archive this for that client specifically. And you can actually use AI and have like specific AI models built for each one of your clients as a chat. And the cool thing about that is that you don't have to continue to give context, right? Like, like if I were to continue to use this, I would say, I'd come back in 4 weeks and I'd be like, hey, it's me again, right? And now James's goals are these. Keep in mind all of his limitations and blah, blah, blah in the past. And I could just kind of like build this ongoing. And it would be interesting, right? To see kind of how I can iterate that over time. Okay. So, you can use any structure you want, right? You can call your clients whatever you want. Tyler, it's a good point. I was just going to hit that. I wouldn't put like client's first name and last name and all of their personal information, right? So keep that in mind, right? So, if you use like someone's first name, are you like unveiling their identity and credit card information? Who knows? Probably not, but who knows? So just keep those things in mind to Tyler's point. That's a really good point, Tyler. All right. So that was just an idea of one specific progression, an 8-week row, progression to increase a 5K row trial time. So I know we spent a bunch of time on that, and it was kind of like a lot of back and forth, but the idea was just to show how you can plug something in and iterate. Okay. And I think that's going to be one of the most important things for us to understand. It's like, how do we get to that end state? Okay. How do we improve our prompting over time? In a few months, it's like, yeah, who cares? We're going to have this right in CoachRx, but as you're using ChatGPT or AI for other things, just understand its limitations. I think that's the most important thing. And all of this that is spit out, it's like, I'm going to take it with a grain of salt. I may not use anything here. I may ask it some follow-up questions in terms of like, what was the idea of the progression that you laid out? What was the intention? What were the principles that laid behind the progression, right? And I can just kind of use that as like inspiration, gain new ideas, and so on and so forth. But just kind of wanted to walk through that for one very specific example. But if you do go through that that ChatGPT prompt library that we have, that database, yeah, just look at everything that we have laid out in there, and understand how it can be or not useful for you, your clients, your use cases, because it goes far beyond program design. There's some data analysis that you can use ChatGPT for, which I think is actually right now out of the box, the most interesting thing. You know, if you upgrade to like Chat GPT 4, they now have the ability to like upload Google Docs and PDFs and stuff like that, and it can scrub all that data and give you feedback, recommendations, so on and so forth. So yeah, there's a lot of possibilities here, guys. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page, that we're not looking at this as like an end all be all solution. We're just like, hey, it exists. How can we use this? How can we leverage this to save some time on the more mundane tasks that we go through as coaches? Not not so that we can bank that time. Maybe some of us want to bank that time, but so that we can put that time in other places, in terms of communicating with our clients, building relationships with our clients, and all of those things. Because one of the biggest gripes that we hear from a lot of our coaches specifically isn't around, I don't want to coach anymore because I hate building relationships with my clients. We get to a point where a lot of coaches are just like, I'm burned out because I'm spending so much time on things I don't enjoy, and I feel like I'm just like recreating the wheel every time I sit behind a computer and design a training program. I mean, we have some coaches that's where they get their fulfillment and inspiration in that creative space around creating training programs. But we do have some coaches that are like, I just want to build great relationships and give my clients good programs so they can so I can see them move forward in their fitness journey. So I would just think about those things moving forward, guys. And the spirit is for this thing to not be an end all be all solution, but how can we use this to help our coaching practice?